Welcome to another seasonal tracking video, and as you already know by the title, today I'm sharing my data for the last 90 days, aka my winter capsule wardrobe. And as usual, I'm gonna show you my most worn items, least worn items, and then very importantly, all of the lessons that I learned along the way. But before I continue, I also wanted to mention two more things. The first one is that I used Index app on my phone for tracking, and because they don't have a custom selection, I did my best to calculate everything carefully. But then more importantly, the second thing is that I was feeling a little bit under the weather, so that is gonna mean my total outfits are gonna be lower. And then I also did a challenge for 5 days, which again, some of these items I decluttered, so the number is gonna be lower. And for reference, in case you're curious, I have 67 outfits in total for the last 90 days during the winter. As I always like to do, I'm gonna start with my tops, specifically the 3 items that I wore 0 times, which is kind of a lot of items that I haven't worn, but it is what it is. And to go quickly through them, first I have this black off-shoulder jumper, then I have the black sleeveless turtleneck, and lastly just the classic beige turtleneck. And now to the 5 items that I wore only once. First, I have this gorgeous white jumper with really unique sleeves. Then I have another gorgeous top. This is the orange turtleneck with puffed sleeves. Then I have the classic red turtleneck. I'm just trying to find a way to show you everything. Okay. Then I have the check turtleneck, and lastly, a black short cardigan. And then another group of 5 items, but this time I wore this 2 times. First, I have my white silk button-up. Then I have this gorgeous pink jumper with really unique buttons. Then I have the plum turtleneck. I have the turquoise jumper. And lastly, I hope you can see everything is falling. Lastly, I have this sheer silk black button-up. And as I usually do, I'm gonna put everything in categories so you can see 0, 1, 2. And then I have 2 items that I wore 3 times. First, I have this nude jumper that I actually loved wearing underneath my turquoise jumper or anytime I wanted to have an extra layer. And then I also have this classic black crewneck jumper that I also wore 3 times. And then for the item that I wore 4 times, I only have 1 and I have an empty hanger, which means the top that I'm wearing today, this is the item that I wore 4 times. Then to the 3 items that I wore 5 times. First, I have my white hoodie that is so comfortable. Then I have the turtleneck, light gray turtleneck. And lastly, this gorgeous pink bright jumper. And now to my most worn items. First, I have this sparkly black turtleneck that I wore 8 times. And then the winner, I have the black roll neck, oversized roll neck that I wore 18 times, which is no surprise to me. I got it last year and I just knew it's gonna be a winner. And now to some of the lessons. The first one that it's really obvious to me is that I prioritize comfort and warmth this winter, because I don't know how it was where you live, but I feel this winter for us, it was just a little bit colder than usual. And then also my lifestyle was a little bit different than usual, because the previous winter I was mostly working from home where I can really control the temperature, but now I spent a lot of time outside. I took my computer with me, I worked outside a lot more, and where I was, I just needed more layers. I needed more warm pieces because those places were colder than my home. And that's why I have loads of wool jumpers at the back, loads of turtlenecks at the back, everything that was kind of covering me up a little bit thicker or a little bit warmer, it's at the back. And then all of the thinner jumpers, all of the button-ups, everything, it's kind of at the front, which is no surprise to me. This is usually what happens in the winter. Also, when it comes to my wool jumper, if you remember, I don't know how it was last year, but I remember that I barely wore it for the last couple of winters, and that was because I shrunk it. But now that I stretched it, I reach for it a lot more, and that's why it's at the back. So sometimes, you know, when we have items we're not reaching for, we can do something about them, and then their wear can definitely change. I'm also happy that some of my white color items are at the back as well, because usually there would be only black at the end. So I think this is a really nice surprise. And then when it comes to the overall selection, currently I have 21 tops, which for me, I think for the winter, it's a little bit excessive in a way. But then at the same time, I felt so many of these items, they have very similar silhouettes, just in different colors. So in a way, I was kind of feeling like I'm repeating myself. So even though I have a big selection, I felt a little bit repetitive. So I think in the future, if I'm gonna add any tops for my winter capsule wardrobe, I'm gonna make sure the silhouette is just a little bit different to everything else that I own. But other than that, I think this is it when it comes to my tops. Like I said, I just prefer everything cozy, comfy, and warm. And now if I continue with my bottoms, I have two items that again I wore 0 times. First is this black satin skirt, which really surprised me. I thought I'm really gonna wear it in the winter. But then second, I have these black special occasion pants that are perfect to wear with heels. And then to the 3 items that I wore 1 time. First, I have the black shorts, which are just a classic for me. Then I have a black mini skirt, which is also another classic. And lastly, just black thermal leggings. And now we're gonna make a jump because here I have 3 items that I wore 4 times each. First, I have the new dark wash bootcut jeans that I got from my mom. Then I have my skinny dark wash jeans that are perfect to wear with my boots. And lastly, my faux leather pants that again are perfect to wear with my boots. And then for the 2 items that I wore 5 times, first I have my medium wash skinny jeans, and second an empty hanger because the black pants that I'm wearing today, which you cannot really see, but they're just a classic black pant, I also wore 5 times. And then I have 2 items that I wore 6 times. First, I have my black skinny jeans that are a classic, and then the new item in my wardrobe, my white jeans. I never know the difference between white, as in the color, and then white, as in a fit. So if you have a tip how to pronounce those, let me know. But yes, the white pants I wore 6 times. And then to the 2 winners, first I have my black mini skirt that I took out of my sport capsule that I wore 8 times. And then the medium wash white jeans I wore, how many times? Okay, 13 times, which is amazing. So I think right away we can see that I wore my white jeans, my white bottoms a lot more than usual. And in the past, my most worn items were actually my skinny jeans, my high-waisted skinny jeans, because that is the only thing that I kind of had in my wardrobe. But now that I have a bigger selection in my silhouettes, I can see that I prefer to have just a wider bottoms, especially because in the winter I could easily layer them with my wool leggings underneath. So again, I could have that extra layer of warmth, and for me this was really essential. So I'm really happy with all of my pieces that I added to my capsule wardrobe recently. I'm also really happy that my white jeans are now at the top, because usually all of my white bottoms, if you remember, they were at the front because I just never wore them, but this time around I just really enjoyed this. And then another thing that it's really obvious to me is that the reason I wore all of these items so much, and these items not at all, is because of the comfort level. All of these black shorts and skirts, they're kind of a little bit more structured, they have a zipper, they're a little bit more rigid in a way, still comfortable, but just not as comfortable as a sports skirt or a really wide jeans. But despite all of that, I still love all of the pieces on here. I still love my skinny jeans, and I'm really curious how much I'm gonna wear this in the spring. And then also I wanted to mention, when it comes to my overall selection, here I have 14 items, and for me this feels like a good number. I don't have too much, I don't have too little, I have loads of different silhouettes, so for me the selection is really nice. And now to my dresses. I have only 1 dress that I wear 0 times, and it's surprisingly the red dress that I usually wear a lot more. But for this season, because I was under the weather a little bit during the holidays, I just didn't reach for it. But then these 2 dresses I wore 1 time each. The first one is the black classic bodycon dress that I actually wore on the Christmas day. And then I have the beige off-shoulder dress that I wore in the challenge. And then to my most worn dresses, the first one that I have is my white wool kind of blend dress that I wore 2 times. The same goes for my special pink logo dress. This one I also wore 2 times. And then my most worn dress, of course, is my black cashmere dress that I wore 3 times. So when it comes to the winter dresses, I think I have the same lesson as with my tops. All of the thicker materials, wool materials, cashmere materials are at the back because these dresses are a lot warmer comparing to the off-shoulder dress or the bodycon dress. This one is just a little bit thinner in material. And honestly, with the selection, I think this is a really nice selection. Having 6 dresses for the winter is more than enough for me. I have no plans to buy any new dresses for the winter because you can see that some of them I haven't even worn once. So overall, I'm happy with my selection. I love these dresses even though I don't wear them loads. And now I still have my outerwear, accessories, bags and shoes to go through. But before I show you everything, I also wanted to remind you that if you're enjoying this video, that you give it a thumbs up because it really helps me out. Thank you! And now I've just changed my location and I'm actually gonna show you all of the items on the screen because I don't have that many and I think it's gonna be easier that way. And as I said before, I'm gonna continue with my outerwear. Now first I have the black vest that I only wore one time. Then my white wool coat I only wore 2 times this time around. Then my faux fur coat I only wore 3 times. And then my black wool coat I wore 6 times, which means my most worn item was my winter puffer jacket or coat that I wore 56 times, which is absolutely amazing. So when it comes to the lessons here, I think, as I've said before, because this winter for me, it just felt a little bit colder. We also had loads more snow. I feel that is why I wore my winter jacket, puffer jacket, so much more than before. I always wear it a ton, but just this winter, I really could not stop living in it. And that makes me super happy because when I bought it, it was not the cheapest. So I had this plan how amazing it's gonna be. And I was exactly right because it's perfect for the colder days. And then as you can kind of tell with all of my wool coats, I just wore them a little bit less this winter, which is absolutely fine. I love the wool coat in the spring or in the fall. And then when it comes to my faux fur coat, I feel like I kind of started disliking it just a little bit because I just don't reach for it anymore. I feel like it's just a little bit too over the top for everyday wear and it's absolutely amazing. It's really comfortable. It's like a wearable blanket and it's actually warmer than my wool coat. So the coat in itself, it's amazing, but just because it's a faux fur coat, I feel I'm kind of outgrowing that. It just feels a little bit too extra sometimes. So I was potentially thinking that in the future, maybe I can find a coat with a similar warmth in a neutral light color and maybe in a different texture, not something that is faux fur. But other than that, when it comes to my coats, I have 5 in total, including the vest. And for me, you know, I don't really see that I need anything more than that for the winter season. And now if I continue with the bags, I have some amazing stats here. First, I have my black crossbody bag that I wore 0 times. The same goes for my nude camera bag. I only wore it 0 times. Then my camel backpack, I only wore it once this time around, which is a little bit surprising. Then my burgundy bag, I wore 2 times. My off-white bag, I wore 3 times. My new pink bag that I really love, I wore 5 times. My coral bag that is kind of my favorite shade, I wore 6 times. And then the new bag that is black with silver hardware, I wore 11 times. My black tote bag, I also wore 11 times. Leather designer bag, I wore 12 times. And my most worn bag was actually a tote bag that is also a new bag in my collection. And this one I wore 16 times. So a very obvious lesson here is that my most worn bags were of course in a neutral color, but very surprisingly, the most worn bag is actually a lighter color. It's not black, which makes me super happy. And I'm just so happy with so many of the bags that I added later in my collection because I've been really enjoying them. As I've said in so many of my latest videos, I really enjoy bags with noticeable hardware. I said this before, but they really feel like jewelry for my outfit, and especially in the winter when everything feels so boring and gloomy, I just love the unique designs of the bag that feel really special. And then the black bag that I have right behind me that I wore 0 times, I'm not really surprised because that's why I kind of put it in here. I kind of knew I'm really not gonna reach for it that much. I love this one specifically in the summer. And then also when it comes to my nude camera bag, this is the only bag that I'm thinking about potentially decluttering in the future. But because I have some matching shoes for the summer, I still want to give it a little bit more time to really see if I'm gonna wear it or not, and then I'm gonna make a decision. And yes, my collection has grown. Currently I have 11 bags, which is insane, but I feel so grateful because they really are special bags to me, and I'm a handbag girly, so it's nice to have a little bit more variety. But other than that, even if I'm not wearing all of the bags all of the time, for me it doesn't really bother me because things are changing with each season. And now to my shoes, which again, I have some weird stats here you're gonna see because I have 6 shoes that I wore 0 times. So let me go through everything. First, I have my nude flat over the knee boots that I wore 0 times. Then my faux leather ankle booties I also wore 0 times. Both of my slingback heels I wore 0 times. And then I have black over the knee boots with a heel that I wore 0 times. I have black ballerinas that I wore 0 times. And then I have 2 pairs I wore only once. First are my black loafers and second are the new black heeled booties. And then the kitten oatmeal boots I wore 2 times. Then my snow waterproof boots I wore 6 times. My Ugg boots I wore 15 times. My leather over the knee boots I wore 20 times. And then the winner are my white sneakers that I wore 25 times. Again, this is kind of a lesson that it's repeating itself, but my flat shoes are always the winners at the top. I just wear them a lot more. And because, as I've said before, this winter I was just a little bit more active. I spent a lot more time outside. I was walking a lot more. That's why I feel I was really prioritizing comfort over everything, and that's why I just wore the shoes that I really love, that I can always count on. And because I was also feeling under the weather during the holiday season, that's also why I just didn't reach for all of the different heels that I have in my collection, because honestly I just didn't have anywhere to wear them. And then when it comes to the entire selection, currently I have 13 pairs of shoes in my winter capsule wardrobe, which I think it's a little bit excessive. As you've seen, a lot of this I just haven't worn once. But honestly, this time around, I wanted to have a bigger selection just to see what I'm gonna actually wear and reach for. And for me, you know, even though I had the bigger selection, it didn't really bother me or overwhelm me when I was making decisions. So for me, that's absolutely fine. And now, of course, I'm gonna go through my accessories as well. And the first item that I have is my white silver belt that I wore 0 times. My small satin scarf I wore 0 times. The wool hat I wore also 0 times. And then white gold belt I also wore 0 times. And then to the 2 items that I wore 1 time. First I have the earmuffs and then the 10 belt. And then I have 2 items that I wore 2 times. First, I have my waterproof snow gloves and then also my plum scarf. And then my black cashmere gloves I wore 3 times, and the same goes for my camel scarf. I also wore it 3 times. Then my pink scarf with hearts I wore 4 times. Then my new black baseball cap I wore 5 times. The same goes for my white scarf. I also wore it 5 times. Then my stone scarf I wore 6 times. My black belt with a silver buckle I wore 8 times. My coral scarf I wore 9 times. And lastly, my black belt with a gold buckle I wore 16 times. Of course, my black belts are at the top, as they always are, and I just love wearing a belt, especially in the winter, because they just create a little bit more dimension. And then also when it comes to the hats and earmuffs, I feel like my baseball cap, I really enjoyed it this winter, and I especially enjoyed it on those days where my hair was just a little bit greasy or I had a bad hair day. And that's why I think the earmuffs or even my black wool hat, that's why I didn't wear those as much as previously. And then when it comes to scarves, I wore them as much as I wanted to, depending on the day, on the mood. I just picked different colors, but again, I love all of my scarves and they're amazing. My selection is staying. And then lastly, what I wanted to say is when it comes to my white belts, this is something that I said before, I usually wear those a lot more in the spring or in the summer. Now, if this makes you feel inspired to start tracking your own wardrobe as well, I will link another video that you can watch next so you can get more information about that. But this is gonna be it for today. I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and I will see you next time.